I am going to talk about this book. And some of you may have seen this before. It's called A Complaint-Free World. And it turns out that the author of this book, Will Bowen, was a Unity minister in Kansas City, right near Unity Village. And Unity Village is in Lee's Summit, and it's right next to Kansas City. And this book was published in 2006. And since then, 13 million people in 106 countries have practiced this program. And for those of you who have done this work before, stay with me because it's going to be worth it. And I must confess that I need this talk. I personally need this talk because I've been noticing myself complaining a lot lately, and just it's becoming a matter of habit. And but I'm not alone. Everyone needs this talk, I think, particularly in what's going on with with the world right now. And complaining is very easy to do, but there are other options. And so whether you're hearing this talk for the first or third time, I'm going to bring some new insights. And I think that we're going to benefit greatly from what's going to be shared. So powerful is the concept of the complaint-free world that the author says, in your hands, you hold the secret to transforming your life. And right below the main title of the book, it says how to stop complaining and start enjoying the life that you always wanted. And so those are pretty big statements. But first, we have to begin with understanding a definition for complaining, because there can be several. And according to Wikipedia, complaining is a spoken expression of grief, pain, or discontent. A spoken expression of grief, pain, or discontent. And by the author's definition, he expands that to gossip or criticism. And so the question is, well, what are we going to talk about? It does fill up a lot of our time, depending on who you are. And it fills up a lot of social media, for instance, and a lot of television, and it creates entire television shows. And so whether you're thinking of complaints about the world, complaints about, oh, my knee hurts today, or expletives, or just those all kind of come into this family of complaints. And George Carlin, the comedian, I believe he's the late comedian. Forgive me if I'm wrong about that. He said, think about this. You're driving on the freeway, and anybody that's driving slower than you is a moron. And anyone that's going faster than you is a maniac. And don't we all know that feeling? Or you don't even necessarily have to equate it to driving. You could be at the grocery store and someone is blocking the aisle. They're going too slow in front of you, or someone is just barreling too fast around you. But I personally experienced this feeling the most on the freeway. And if you think about it this way, in order for these feelings to happen, you have to think, I'm in the middle. I'm just right. So all the people going faster than me are idiots. All the people that are going slower than me are morons. And maybe that's kind of that can be a metaphorical expression for a lot of things in life. We always feel that we're just right. And that's one of the sources of complaints. You've got a lot to complain about on either side because you're coming from this attitude of I'm right and they're wrong. And so let's come back to the complaint-free world. In this book, the author says that complaints are negative thoughts, and negative thoughts aren't helping. Negative thoughts present themselves most of the time as complaining. And think about every complaint as a prayer. So whether it's, oh, this is just going to get worse, and so it is. Putin is never going to stop doing that XYZ, and so it is. I feel I'm not worthy, and so it is. I'll never find my life partner, and so it is. I'll never get a raise. I'll never get out of this money situation, and so it is. So these are all complaints. And if you think about everything that you say as a prayer, complaints aren't a very good prayer, according to our new thought tradition. And I shared many times in the past that most of the thoughts that we think are negative. Most of the thoughts we think are negative, and research has shown this. And among those, 95% of the thoughts that you think are repetitious thoughts. It's not like you just think that one thought and you don't think it again for the rest of the day or for the rest of the week. You're so much of your discourse mentally is repetitious negative thoughts. So we need a tune-up, and let this talk be a tune-up. There is, speaking of positive and negative thoughts, there's another book, I don't have it here with me, but it's called Power versus Force, and it's by an author called his name is David Hawkins. And he said that a negative thought has low energy and very low power, but a single positive thought can outweigh so many negative thoughts. And he actually had a method for measuring the frequency and the power of positive versus negative thoughts. But if you think about a room of a small group of people praying positively, like this group, praying positively and intending positively, he says that it's so much powerful than a much larger group intending negatively, because negative thoughts have such little power on, and the you can feel it in the feeling tone, and the frequency of those thoughts are much higher when they're positive. So all this said, there are reasons for us to complain, and I think it helps to just talk about these really quickly. Complaining, it often feels good to complain. It relieves some stress, and we're social beings. This is, you know, it's not something that I'm sure as long as there was speech, there was complaining. That would be a good research topic. But also it's a way that we can get attention. We can draw attention to ourselves. Oh my God, it's so hot in here. Oh, this is so awful. You know, we're drawing that attention to us. And it also can remove responsibility. You know, look at this thing that life dealt me. You know, oh, my coworkers are ruining this project. Or it's moving responsibility over here, and it's putting ourselves in the maybe perhaps the victim mode, as I talked about a few weeks ago. The world is happening to me, and when the world happens to me, I'm going to complain about the world. Finally, complaining may just be a bad habit. Did you grow up in a family where complaining was a frequent mode of communication? I did. And my mom ended up, she complained a lot about my dad, a lot. And I complained a lot about my mom. And when that happened, my dad, one time he turned to me and said, bite your lip. Actually, many times he said, bite your lip, son, bite your lip. And I didn't understand that. I thought he was taking away, you know, I have to complain about mom because, or else there's not justice. It's not fair that she gets to get away, you know, with this behavior. And so I get to complain about her, but then he just kept on saying, bite your lip. And I didn't understand it, but I think I understand it now. Thank you, Dad. So the author Will Bowen says that complaining is an epidemic that is destroying our happiness, our relationships, our health, and our success. And whether you think that's true or not, complaining as an epidemic that's interesting to think about, and it ruining our lives is a good thought to try on. To what extent is complaining affecting your life? And Will Bowen goes further to say that the problem is that most people don't even realize the extent of their complaining. Hence, this practice that I'm gonna share with you. And so the solution is to stop complaining, because when you take away all these negative thoughts into that void, you will have perhaps nothing but kind things to say. You will be changing your whole mode of communication if the first thing that you go to is not complaining. The first thing you go to might look like something else, and I'll describe that something else in a minute. And through this exercise, we can envision a world where we're not blaming anyone, where we're taking responsibility where we can, and where we're creating ideas and solutions instead of complaining. What's that saying? Spiritually developed people talk about ideas and solutions, whereas spiritually undeveloped people talk about other people. Someone can maybe give me the exact quote on that, but you heard that before, right? So we talk about ideas and solutions, big picture thinking, instead of talking about look what they did. And all this being done, if we bring our complaining, let's say our average complaint rate is 100 a day. If we cut that in half, we don't have to join a Facebook group or a Zoom group that's all about anti-complaining. We just have to change our behavior a little bit, and it will change our environment. If we change it, it's going to change the people around us. They're going to notice it in us. Our discourse with them is going to change because we're not talking about complaining anymore. And another payoff about complaining is trust. A complaint-free person is somebody that I want in my circle. Don't you? Don't you want a complaint-free person in your circle? So how do we do all this? And is it really possible and realistic to not complain? And I say no. I say, for maybe for you, maybe for a few people in this room who I know are really good at not complaining, but for me, I'm going to say, I am not going to separate myself from complaining forever, but I want to bring my complaining from here to here, from here to here. And so in order to do that, if I can't get through one day without a complaint, then I'm certainly not going to be able to change the habit. So the author Will Bowen, once again, says awareness is the key. And I'm looking for it. It's on my wrist. So this is one possible key, a wristband. But it's an awareness tool. And you don't have to use the wristband. You can use anything you want. It doesn't have to be a physical object. It could be your awareness. It could be a sticky pad. Don't complain. It can be something else. I'll describe a few tips in a moment. But if you want to use the wristband, the way it works is you put it on. Let's just say, I'm going to say from this moment on, I'm not going to complain. You put it on and you declare this as day one. And when you catch yourself complaining, you switch it. So let's say I've gone 3 days, haha. Let's say I've gone 3 days without complaining. And all of a sudden I complain. It's time to switch my wristband. So whatever wrist it's on, you complain and you switch it as an acknowledgement of the fact that you complained, and then you're back on day one. It starts all over again. Now, how many days should you do this? It's up to you. I think it would be incredible for me to go 3 days without complaining, or maybe 7 days. Now, the author, according to this book, says, try for 21 days. Try for 21 days, because it's the same amount of time that it takes a chicken to hatch from an egg. It's the same amount of time that it takes to break a habit. So try it. Try it for a while. And if you have to switch the wristband 15 times a day, 20 times a day, 30 times a day, you're doing something. You're putting some effort and intention into this. And I'll just list a couple more tools. One is find a complaint buddy. Someone that you're with might say, hey, David, it's time for you to change your complaint band, right? And so that's a good way. Just pair up with somebody in this mission of not complaining. Another one is to think about the serenity prayer. And for those of you who know the serenity prayer, it's God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So if you can change it, change it. Don't complain about it. If you can change someone's behavior by approaching them directly, if there's someone's bothering you, change it and have that critical, tough conversation. And if you can't change it, if it's something that can't be changed, then what's the use complaining? So that's an interesting filter to try on. But finally, and the most powerful one here for me, this whole thing is about not doing something. And our faith tradition is about doing something. And instead of thinking about not complaining, think about this. Emma Curtis Hopkins, the teacher of teachers, the mother of New Thought. She taught Myrtle and Charles Fillmore, the founders of Unity. She taught Nona Brooks, the founder of Divine Science, and she taught Ernest Holmes, the founder of Religious Science, aka CSL. She was so influential. And one of the things that the favorite thing of mine that she said was, now she was talking to a group of healers. I don't know if they called them healing practitioners or something at that time, but she said to them, if I were to be asked directly as to the quickest way to get your healing power going, I would probably say, praise everything and everyone in your mind. Praise everything and everyone in your mind. So how might that look? Getting on the freeway. First thing you do when you get onto the freeway might be saying a prayer and a blessing for everyone around you, that they get home safely, that they don't text and drive, that they are safe, and that they are blessed, wonderful, sacred human souls, transient beings, sentient beings in this world that matter. But praising everything and everyone in your mind will raise your vibration so quickly. And when you do that, how can you be complaining about them? If you think about someone else that does something to you that makes you complain, say, where's the gift in this for me? Say, what's occurring is appropriate for them. They could have had the worst news. They could have a relative. They themselves could be extremely sick. They could have just gotten fired from their jobs. You don't know. And you have been that person on the freeway to pass someone fast. You have been that person on the freeway to be the moron. We all have. We trade places. And how many people have you angered and made complaint about you? You know, it goes both ways. It's a two-way street. So praise everything and everyone in your mind. I am so glad to revisit this talk. I'm going to put this wristband on right now. And Jen is going to hold me accountable. She's going to remind me when I complain. And I hope that you try this workout. And with that, I am complete. And I'm going to spotlight Laura.
Oh, thank you for that talk. I really needed that. And it's nice to know that, we're not alone in our humanness. So thank you. From the darkest place to a higher space, calling from every direction. On every single path I have stood strong, then cowered fast. What a strange perception. Well, life is demanding, but I am understanding. The best I could was where I stood for a higher good and greater truth. Where once it was covered, now I have proof. There's a bigger lesson, one I never expected, rising up from misunderstood. A higher good. Oh. Well, I'm always getting ready on steps that are so unsteady, dancing the same old dances. Ooh, well, I am never really sure how to fit myself through the door. Well, it's all part of taking chances. Well, life is demanding. Mwah.